All right, welcome back to the garage and the continuation of the Triumph TR3 restoration project. And today we're just going to do a little bit more panel fitting. I've got the front driver's side fender here, and we're just taking a quick look at that. And it's in pretty good condition considering the age of the car. It does have some issues. There's a cage nut broken off there. There's a bit of a dent here that we'll have to figure out how we're going to get that out. And a few other little areas. There's a little area at the back here where the little flange piece is sort of separated, so we'll have to do some fixing on that. But otherwise, it's pretty good. It's solid on the bottom. It looks pretty good on the inside. So I'm happy with that. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to do a trial fit of this fender. And again, we'll go ahead with the tools and stripping discs, and we'll get that surface rust off the panel to make it look a little bit better. I think I've come to the decision to strip off any existing filler and go back down to bare metal on these panels. So for example, back here where we've had some existing filler, I think I'm going to strip that completely down to bare metal and start from scratch. I think that's probably the best thing to do. Then I'll know exactly what's underneath that. So I think we'll end up stripping that panel. We'll strip all the filler off this panel, start from scratch, etc. And we'll do that for all panels going forward as well, just so we have a good base to start from, a good basis to start from, let's say, so we know exactly what's underneath that filler. All right, so that's what the plan is today. I'm just going to fit this fender. We'll probably put the door back on just temporarily, just to see how that fits together, and then we'll move from there. I really need to dig out the front apron off the 59 at the side of the house and get that fitting on the front of the car so we can fit up the front of the fenders and see how they fit. So that will be part of the plan for this week, hopefully, as well. If the weather ever gets nicer, and again, another really cold day. It's about 8 degrees Celsius is the high. It's pretty cold and damp outside, again, raining. So only 50 degrees Fahrenheit out in the garage. It's about 10 degrees Celsius. So it's not exactly warm out here at the moment. So we'll do our best to stay warm, and we'll continue to work on this restoration project. All right, we've got the front fender mounted, and I have to say it fits pretty darn good. Need a little bit of hammer and dolly work here along this top flange piece on the underside. It's a little bit wavy, so I might be able to do that while the fender's actually mounted on the car. I might be able to pound up from the bottom with the dolly on top. Anyway, we'll see if we can do a little bit of work on that. So we are going to get rid of this surface rust. We are going to fix this area here. Looks like there's a couple of spot welds here I can drill out and maybe attempt to fix this area. Shouldn't be too difficult. I've had to do something similar on my 60. Missing a hole over here, which is kind of curious for this mount back here. So we'll have to put a hole and a cage nut here, as well as fix up some of these holes are kind of oversized and bent out of shape. So we'll fix those as well at some point. We did put the new door back on with the door latch, actually, so it's just sort of kept in place there. That's looking good. Amazing front gap. Looks pretty narrow, actually almost too narrow, but the door does open fine. So there's that area I was talking about where the fender sort of detached from the inner flange. So should be able to weld that back together without too many issues. Maybe even stick a little bit of round bar in there for some reinforcement. We'll get there when we get there. But I think what we're going to do now, like I said, is we're just going to do some de-rusting, and we're going to remove all that old Bondo from the front and from the rear fender. So got the garage door open, we got the side door open. It's going to get awfully dusty in here. So we'll get a mask out and we'll go to town. I think we'll start with a flat disc just to get the worst of the filler out. Then we'll swap down to our silicone carbide disc or stripping disc to finish it off, just so we don't gouge the metal up too much. So that's what the plan is. So stripping mode for the next probably hour or so. Anyway, that's nice and clean. So we'll do the same process on the front fender. Looking good. That'll be the last time you see that fender in that condition. And we'll probably clean up this saddle piece a little bit, maybe up to the halfway mark. See what that looks like under that surface rust. All right. All right, we let the dust settle, and happy with the results. Didn't find anything, too bad underneath all that Bondo. It's actually kind of shocking how much Bondo was in there considering the condition of the panels. So it is a little bumpy up here in the front, and we can see that by the remnants of some of the old Bondo stuck in there. And there's a few little check marks here and there. But other than that, the panel came up pretty well. One big dent back here. Probably pull that out with a stinger just to make that have a little bit less fill in there. We did clean up to just that spot there on the saddle piece going across the top. That's looking good. Door's looking good. Fender's looking good. So obviously everything needs a little bit of work, but the fit is really good. Actually, I'm quite impressed with how things are fitting together. And I don't see anything overly daunting, which is good. And yeah, I'm ready to move on to the next step of doing some body work and some filler work. Obviously, you need to do some corrections here where there's going to be some drilling and welding before we do any Bondo work. I'm not really too concerned about this flash rusting. It's still fairly low humidity, although it's obviously fairly high humidity today. If it does flash rust, I'll just re-sand it down with 80 grit on a block. No big deal. But anyway, at least we can see what we're working with. I'm happy we went back down to bare metal. I don't think there was a reason for so much filler in some of the areas, but we'll see once we start blocking this out. We'll probably do a guide coat on a dry block and just see where we're at as far as lows and highs are concerned. Some of them I can feel, some of them I can't. But anyway, I'm happy to be back down to bare metal. All right. All right, now that we've got the driver's side looking pretty good as far as the panels are concerned, I think we can start on the passenger side. So we're going to dig the rear fender out. I think it's in the back of the truck, just using the truck as a bit of storage at the moment, just to give us a bit more space in the garage. So I think we'll pull that rear quarter out, and we'll do the same thing. We'll use our new captive nuts and fasteners on the back here, and we'll be able to fasten that fender up a little bit more securely than we were able to before. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll fit that up, see how it fits. And I'm sure we'll have to do quite a bit of stripping on this fender as well to see what the condition is under the Bondo. But let's get a start on that, and we'll continue our way from the rear passenger side to the front passenger side, and then we'll do the door at the very end. All right, here's a look of the passenger side rear fender, and this has a lot more Bondo on it. So it'll be interesting to get this stripped off and see what it actually looks like underneath. Again, from the inside of the fender, this looks really good. Just some surface rust back there, but I don't see any big dents. Usually you'll be able to see some obvious dents or caving by looking at the back of the panel, but it actually looks pretty darn good. So even the rear cap there that goes over the tail light looks good. It's a little bit of a bendy flange there, but and I think there's some missing cage nuts. I think there's one here, for example, that looks like it's just about to fall out, but we don't need them all to get this on the car. So we'll go ahead and we'll fit this up. We've got the 3 nuts backed off at the rear there so we can slide this in, and we'll get it bolted up and see what it looks like, and then we'll get it stripped down. All right, we got that rear fender fitted now on the passenger side, and it fits really well actually. So fits better than the driver's side. There's no bow at the bottom, so that looks really good. It fits nicely at the back, fits really well across the whole way, all the way down to where the rock guard, where stone guards would be. So I think there's one problem I have is this captive nut, I think down here on the bottom is non-existent, which could be a challenge. That means I'll probably have to do a little bit of cut and repair in order to get a new cage nut in behind there. Or maybe I can possibly do something like a riv nut or something to hold that. Anyway, we'll figure that out at a later date. Right now, we just want to strip this fender down, see what it looks like underneath. And then, like I said, we'll move forward, do the front passenger side, and then we'll concentrate on the door probably at a later date. It takes a little bit more work to get that stripped down since it has to be disassembled first before we get to that point. All right, so let's get to stripping this. Again, dust mask on, face shield, etc. We'll crank the doors open. It's getting pretty cold now, getting a little bit later in the evening. It's about 5 degrees Celsius. So yeah, I'm gonna get a little frozen while I do this next job. I just thought I'd give you an idea of how much Bondo is on these rear fenders for whatever reason. But you can quite see there's quite a bit of Bondo there. And I don't think it's really necessary. So we'll get to the bottom of it. But I thought I would just take a quick look at that. That's got to be pretty close to a 1/4 inch, I would say. Anyway, a lot of Bondo on there. Car's going to be a lot lighter when I'm done. And that, my friends, was a lot of Bondo. Probably put the whole can on there. Anyway, I'm glad that's off. We're going to blow this out or sweep this up. And we'll clean this panel off so you can have a better look at it. There's absolutely no need to have that much Bondo on this panel. It's not that bad. You'd think it was, but you can pretty much tell usually by looking at the inside of the panel how straight it's going to be. And this looked pretty good from the inside. So yeah, it's going to need a little skim coat of filler, but I mean a little. So anyway, glad that's off. Glad I resisted the urge to keep the old bodywork. That's never a good idea, but it's definitely a shortcut if you want to risk it. And in this case, I didn't want to risk it, and I'm glad I didn't. So anyway, let's get that panel cleaned off, or get this area swept up. Get that panel cleaned off so you can have a quick look, and then we'll move on to the front. Hopefully that's a little bit better. All right, we've got the garage cleaned up a little bit. And here's a quick look of that fender all wiped down. Looks pretty good. There's one little bit of a dent here. You can see that dent, but nothing to warrant that much filler. So it definitely will need a skim coat, but nothing so severe as to what was on there. So we'll get that looking better eventually. I think we're going to call it a night out here. Hockey game's on tonight, so we don't want to miss that playoff game. Leafs and Tampa Bay. I think what we'll do is when we pick back up is we'll take a look at the passenger side front fender. We've got that sitting up over on the wall over here. Let's take a wander over here and see what that looks like. So again, I think this one's got quite a bit of Bondo in it for no apparent reason. So yeah, it's pretty much Bondo covered. It's got an antenna hole in it, which we're going to fill. I don't want to run with a radio in a TR3, so we'll fill that. But the inside, it's had a repair down the bottom on this one, so potentially could be quite a bit of filler on the bottom here, depending on how good that repair was done. But other than that, the nose looks pretty good, and the rest of it looks pretty good in here. So hopefully this will clean up okay, and we'll uncover what's in the bottom of this fender tomorrow or the next day, whenever we get to it. So that's it for tonight, guys. We'll get back out here tomorrow and do a bit more exploration. See you then. All right, welcome back to the garage now, Tuesday afternoon, and we're picking up where we left off. So yesterday we finished that rear passenger fender and fitted it to the car. Today we're going to tackle that front passenger fender that's sitting over there against the wall. And we're also going to strip this door down, the passenger side door, and see what that looks like and fit that to the car. So we'll have the passenger side of the car put back together. But before we get to that point, we're going to have to make an awful lot of dust again. We reloaded on the stripper discs, or stripping discs. So we got another 5 discs here ready to go. Those discs don't last very long, unfortunately. They tend to round off and become less effective, let's say, in stripping. It takes a lot longer and much better if you have a new, fresh disc. So we've spent another 25 bucks on that, as well as some other few little things that we found there, some sandpaper and a few more flap discs as well. So just to reload on the items required to strip the car, and looking forward to getting the passenger side finished stripped. All right, here we are on the front passenger side fender before we start to strip it. And we've kind of run into our first fitment issue, which is going to take a little bit to resolve. Looks like this fender comes a little bit too far back here at the bottom of the A-post, as it kind of overlaps the slot in the outer sill for where that fender is supposed to drop in. So it's tightened all the way down here at the bottom of the A-post, so that fender can't really go any more further. So I'm not sure if this outer sill was put in the wrong place, but there is a little pocket or a little recess in that sill where that fender is supposed to drop into, and you can see how it's sort of sticking out here. So we'll have to figure out what to do there. We're going to fit the door and see how the door fits according to where the fender ends. And if it fits okay with the door, then I think we'll just end up, what we'll do is end up just cutting back the sill here and making a new pocket a little bit further back. But that's going to be dependent on whether the door fits at the gap at the front. The other problem is with it being out so far and not dropped in, of course, on the bottom, I don't know if I can show this to you or not, probably can't even see this myself, but on the bottom here, there's probably a little bit of a gap. Can you see that there? Just got it being held by a pair of vice grips at the front. But at the back there, there's a little bit of an issue with the fit as well, as it's not quite tight. I'm not even sure if these fasteners actually align back here. But anyway, we'll get that sorted, but that's the first kind of real fitment issue with this front fender. Well, just like the rear fender, an absolute incredible amount of Bondo in this front fender. We knew we were going to have some issues with that replacement panel in the bottom, but man, it is just caked on there. So haven't even gone to the fiber disc yet. We're just hitting it with the flap disc, getting some of the excess off before we go to the fiber disc. But man, is it caked on there. Anyway, we'll keep going, but it's making an absolute mess. Oh, I'm glad we've got the Alpha covered up with 4 layers. You got basically 3 car covers on it and then blankets over top of it, so it's being protected from all this dust. But yeah, what a mess this fender is. Oh, we'll keep going. We'll get her cleaned up. All right, that was a lot of fun. Not. Anyway, fender's stripped, and I think this is probably the worst panel on the car thus far. It's got quite a few little dents in the nose, a little flat spot here, some dents here, some dents up here, some dents back here, and of course that big patch in the bottom, which actually looks like it was done not too bad, to be honest with you. Consider it was brazed in. I'm used to running into some sort of brazing on these cars, so actually doesn't look too bad, other than, like I mentioned, that fit at the rear here is not great. So anyway, the next step is to fit the door and see how that fits according to how this fender is. I'm going to fill this antenna hole. We're not going to be running with a radio on this car, so we'll fill that. Mysteriously, the holes for the mirrors are gone. I don't believe any of these are supposed to be the holes. They're too small, I believe, for the stem of the mirror to go through. So something going on there as far as the mirrors are concerned. I'm going to need to figure out where the mirrors need to go and actually drill a hole there. I don't mind the mirrors out on the fenders on these cars. Some guys are doing a mirror conversion to this area up here where the plate goes for the windscreen, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think we're going to keep the wing mirrors on this car and keep that classic look. But anyway, it's coming together. We'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll strip that door down and get all the interior panels off and all the hardware off. And then we'll get that stripped down and get that fitted. So we'll probably at least another hour and a half or so to get that door fitted to the car. It's going to take that long for me to strip it, at least maybe 2 hours. Okay, passenger door is done and it cleaned up nicely. Got less issues than the driver's side door, which kind of makes sense because obviously the driver's side door gets a lot more use over the years. So actually cleaned up very nicely. So hopefully it'll fit. That's one of the only issues now. So we're going to slap the hinges back on it and put it where it needs to be. I can tell you one thing, that factory Triumph primer really adheres well to these cars. I've struggled to get that off on several cars now. So shout out to the old Triumph painters who slapped on that primer good and thick. It is certainly hard to get off, even after 65 going on 70 years. All right, guys, looking pretty good on the passenger side. Pretty shiny. Back down to bare metal, thank goodness. Anyway, checking on that door fit. It actually fits pretty good. Again, just an initial quick fit. It actually fits a little bit better on this side, but of course now this side sticks out. So I'm wondering if this whole saddle piece is actually shifted this way a little bit, because remember that side is in, now this side is out, and that's basically as far in as the door can go. So we have a stick out on this side and we have a stick in on the other side, but that gap is pretty good just as an initial gap. Again, you got to fix that piece down the bottom for that to work out properly. But as far as the body line's concerned, it's a little high on the back, so that could probably go down a little bit. But anyway, we got something to work with, so happy about that. Anyway, glad that the most of the panels are stripped. Of course, we still need the boot and the bonnet and the front apron to be stripped at some point. But I really wanted just to see what these panels look like underneath all that Bondo to begin with, so we know where to start basically on our next project. So I think what I'm going to do next is, number one, I'm going to finish up stripping these saddle pieces all the way across. So this one here, we've got about probably half of it done. We got to do the other half in the center. And then we want to take a look at doing this, probably this little piece of B-post over here, and then across this saddle piece where it's not looking so good there in the middle. So I'm actually thinking about cutting that gas filler opening out and putting a new piece of sheet metal in there, because that's looking a little bit ragged. So we might do that. I don't have a hole saw, so I've been looking at purchasing a hole saw. So I'm going to measure that hole before I go in tonight and see if I can get a hole saw that's approximately the size of that opening, and probably just cut a big square around it, drill the hole for the gas opening, and then just weld it back in carefully so I don't warp that panel. It does have quite a bit of movement in it actually right now, so it is a little bit flexible, let's say. Same with the front here is also quite flimsy. It's got a lot of movement to it, so it's possible that might have shifted over time, but I'm not sure what's exactly going on at the moment. But the other thing I might want to do is I want to look through my front fender spares and see if I actually might have a better fender, one that doesn't have a repair on the bottom. I don't think that I do, but I might want to investigate, just because there is a fair, like I said, this is the worst panel on the car so far. Quite a few dents, and of course that repair on the bottom. So I'm thinking I might actually just look quickly through the spare fenders I have and see if I've got one that's better that I can maybe just fit on, and see if that's going to help out. Before I actually go ahead and cut this sill, I'll see if it might be the actual fender repair that's the problem. It's potentially the problem. Then actually cutting the sill and finding out after is actually that repair piece that's the problem. So does that make sense? I think I'm ramming a little bit. I'm not sure if I've made sense there. But anyway, that's the plan of attack for the next few days out here anyway. More stripping and more discovery.